We will not ever be a socialist country.
No, I sure hope not. But surprisingly, socialism remains popular among young people.
I think socialism is great.
Socialism stays winning.
And their party, the Democratic Socialists of America, says,
we are committed to transforming our society into one based on collective ownership.
Collective ownership. They say that will bring
freedom, equality,
and solidarity.
Give me a break. Socialism has been tried in all these places. It failed in all those places. China began to prosper only after the communists legalized some private enterprise. But every attempt at real socialism has failed. Even if young people don't remember the collapse of the Soviet Union, they should have noticed the masses of unhappy people still fleeing Venezuela. And above all, they should look at North Korea. Watching the cheering on government media, it looks like North Koreans love socialism. The country even has influencers who brag about how wonderful North Korea is.
Literally, wherever you go, there are amusement parks.
It's just deceitful propaganda. But some silly Americans believe.
The people are good. The leadership is good. They are a great proletarian nation.
Come on, even CNN and PBS report the truth.
North Korea is repressive and cruel.
They have created a fearsome police state.
Not many people escape North Korea. And those who do fear talking about it because if they do, their families might be killed.
Not just you, but your entire 3 generations will be wiped out.
Charles Ryu escaped North Korea. He speaks out only because he has no immediate family left in North Korea. His story of escaping twice is powerful. You grew up mostly alone.
That's right. My dad abandoned me when I was 5, and my mother passed away when I was 11.
3 years after she died, you're 14 years old.
Mm-hmm.
You decide to try to escape.
When I first escaped North Korea, my dad, who was in China, he asked my half-brother to come rescue me from North Korea because he knew that I was with my aunt, who was very abusive at the time. And she blackmailed my father, saying that if you don't send us money, we are going to kill your child and sell him to the black market. So my dad then sent my half-brother, it's like, you gotta go get Toru. And we had a broker arranged, and the broker told me that, hey, you can just swim across that Yellow River and nobody's gonna care, and you're gonna go live with your dad.
Sounds easy, but it wasn't.
It's deep, wide, and fast. And the water in the river is cold, so it can easily cramp your muscles.
There are guards in every 100 meters with AK-47 waiting to shoot you. But there are times when you're allowed to go in the river because North Korea uses the Yellow River as the source of water, right? So there is no running water. So you can go in and you can do your daily chores. I was pretended that I was taking a bath, and when nobody was looking during the daytime, I swam into the river, and then I swam across Yellow River, and my dad was on the other side waiting for me with a taxi cab. And as soon as I got there, we just drove off, and we got to a hotel. And then the next morning, my dad took me to his house.
How did he know you were coming across them?
My dad was in communication with my half-brother at all times. And the broker in North Korea, he had a Chinese cell phone. So he was calling internationally across from North Korea to China.
In China, you were surprised to find life was better.
Absolutely, absolutely. When I first came to China, for me, it felt like getting into a time machine and fast forwarding 50 years into the future. Because in North Korea, there were no internet cafe, there is no arcade, there was no 24-hour running electricity. Nobody's telling me, you're gonna go to jail. So yes, it was amazing and it was life-changing.
We Americans think of China as a surveillance state, that you're not free.
There's no freedom of thought, there's no freedom of conscience, there's no freedom of political assembly, of religion.
They'll punish you if you say the wrong thing, but for you, it was freedom?
Because the level of freedom that I had in America compared to China, yes, that makes sense. But at the time, when I just came out of North Korea, being in China was like heaven for me. In China, you can actually use Chinese version of Google besides like the political things, right? Economically, you can search anything like what's happening in South Korea, what's happening in North Korea. Like the information are there, right? But in North Korea, nothing like that exists.
Internet in North Korea is heavily restricted, more so than in China. And some natives don't even know what the internet actually is.
There is no freedom of speech, freedom of movement, freedom of religion. I know China recently allowed Christianity in there, right? But in North Korea, there is nothing like that exists.
But people say, the Chinese government, they watch your every move.
Chinese government do watch your every move, right? And they surveillance you, they have cameras everywhere. But in North Korea, it's 100 times worse than China. So me coming from North Korea to China, I didn't feel that at all. One of the example was in China, you can watch American Hollywood movies. Nobody cares, right? You can watch like as many as you want. But in North Korea, if you do that, you're gonna get in trouble.
But North Koreans now have cell phones.
They do have cell phones, but there is no internet on it. And that phone takes a screenshot of the user's home screen randomly, and he saves it to a folder where a user does not have access to. Only the government does. So that at any given moment, government can actually look at that, and North Korean regime can look at that and say, oh, this is what you're doing. You're in trouble, right? And also on top of that, North Korean people's annual salary is anywhere between $800 to $1,400. And then the cell phone costs about $1,400. So it's an extremely luxury thing. It's only an elite can afford that.
Costs a year's salary.
Yes, yes.
For more of my content, go to johnstossel.com. I post a new short video every Tuesday. That's at johnstossel.com. When you swam across, you were still a full believer in the dictator. He was godlike.
Yes, that's right. I went to restaurants and I would hear people talking about Kim Jong-il, right? And that was shocking to me because in North Korea, like I would have to use Kim Jong-il and then a dear leader. But in China, that was non-existent. They would actually insult him, right? And they would actually call him fat pig. Part of me was offended because they're talking bad about Kim Jong-il. I feel like I'm gonna get in trouble. Kim Jong-il and Kim Il-sung were like the good guys, right? Because in North Korea, instead of learning the world history or Korea history, we had to learn Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il's history from the first book to the third book until I was 11 years old. And in that, we learned, you know how America bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki twice and Japanese surrendered. But in North Korea, we learned that Kim Il-sung defeated the head-to-toe armed Japanese and saved us from the Japanese. So growing up, listening to those kind of propagandas, like you believe those kind of propagandas.
Why would you believe it? To my ears, it just sounds so ridiculous that the dictator does everything, makes the sun shine.
The moment you're born until the moment you die, that's what you hear all the time. And you're completely blocked out from the rest of the world. And that's the only thing that you've known for your entire life, right? If it wasn't for Kim Il-sung, and if it wasn't for Kim Jong-il, we are not gonna be here. In my textbook, in like the mathematics, I learned that like how they portray Americans, right? So it's like, oh, there were 20 evil American tanks, and one brave North Korean tank comes in and destroys 5 of evil American tanks. Like how many evil American tanks are left, right? And also Korean literature, there was one section I particularly remember when Kim Jong-il was really young. He learned about what Japanese done to North Korea, so he got really mad. So he grabbed a calligraphy pen and grabbed the ink and painted over Japan, right? And as soon as he did that, as soon as Kim Jong-il did that, Japan started getting hurricanes and storms and started raining. So it's like portraying him as some sort of like, I guess like a god. Yes.
But you believed.
You believe, yeah. You have to, otherwise, I mean, that's what you're listening to. That's what your friends are telling you. That's what families are telling you. That's what your school teacher is telling you 24/7. The moment when you wake up, there is a propaganda song. And we are proud to be part of that regime, right? So, like teaching you I guess sort of like a pride and also like wanting to be part of that kind of like regime.
And teaching people to fear America, which North Korea portrays as a wasteland.
North Korea portrays Americans as like some sort of like werewolf, trying to dehumanize Americans. And believe me, most people believe that. Most people think Americans are non-humans, right? With long nose and facial hairs. So in America, right, if you were to ask a child, for example, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like, what do you think they're going to say? They're going to say, okay, I want to be a president. I want to be a firefighter. I want to be an astronaut. Right? I want to be a pilot. But in North Korea, they want to be Kim Jong-il's human shield. And dying for the regime is the most noble thing that you can do. When I was young, like that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be Kim Jong-il's human shield. Taking
Not
bullets
just
for
a
him.
bodyguard, a human shield?
Human shield, literally.
Die for him.
Dying for him, yes. Diving and catching
Why would you
bullets.
want that?
It's that like I've watched so many propaganda movies and like documentaries about like North Korean soldiers dying for what's right. Right? So meaning that like, defending ourselves, like defending the country from evil Americans, right? So like dying for Kim Jong-il and dying for regime is the most noble thing that you can do in North Korea. So like I wanted to be like that. I wanted to be a hero.
You smile now, but you believe this.
That's right, yes.
In his lifetime, great leader Kim Jong-il desired to build a modern indoor wading pool for people. Visiting the Munsu Water Park, foreigners and overseas Koreans said, "It is the best water park in the world. It is a pride of the Korean people and a victory of Korean socialism."
The water park exists.
Water park exists, yes. And also, believe it or not, North Korea has one of the largest stadium in the world. So who do you think built those? Military does, right? North Korea has 25 million people, and men that are over the age of 17 has to serve in the military for 12 years. And in that 12 years, like what are they gonna do? There isn't enough resources for them to train in shooting guns, right? I mean, most of North Korean armies carry empty magazines in their AK-47. Right? There is no resources. So they're forced to build those kind of things. So yes, those kind of things exist, but at what cost, right? People are starving. North Korea is a socialist country. No buying and selling is allowed, right? The government's supposed to, not government, North Korean regime, supposed to take care of you.
Well, why do you make that distinction? They are the government.
I don't believe that they're a government. I believe they're a cartel. I believe that they are their regime. They're oppressing its people. They're formed against people's will. Like if you don't vote in North Korea, you're gonna be treated as a betrayer, and not just you, but your entire 3 generations will be wiped out from North Korea. And how can we call that a government? How can we call that how can we justify that to they're my government. It's their cartel.
So this country is so repressive, and yet, unlike other socialist dictatorships, it's surviving and building expensive weapons. Why have they kind of succeeded?
Because they have a complete, total control and a lockdown. Nobody can leave North Korea besides those few chosen elites, right? Regular people, they can't even travel within North Korea. They have to get permissions, right? So no information going in, no information going out, right? So that's why I believe North Korea have been able to maintain that total dictatorship for as long as I can remember.
So if people leave and see how people live in these other countries, why do they come back, these diplomats?
Those diplomats, they come back to North Korea because they're one of the elites and they have been selected. They're the most loyal people in North Korea.
So their life is pretty good.
That's one of the misconceptions that like the Westerners have, is that all North Korean people are brainwashed. All North Korean people are starving and everyone wants to go to war with America. But that's not true. I mean, there are some people in North Korea lives actually better lives than middle-class Americans, and they don't want to escape North Korea. They don't want to betray the regime because they have it good.
Let's return to his first escape from North Korea. So you're in China?
Yes.
You're relatively free. Mm-hmm. What happened?
My happiness in China was short-lived because Chinese government don't recognize North Koreans as refugees.
The Chinese cooperate with the North Korean dictator.
That's right, yeah. So they have a treaty called Friendship Treaty, basically meaning that if a North Korean defector, North Korean people comes to China, they will capture them.
There were rewards for turning in someone like you, and somebody reported you for $126.
Yeah, my dad's neighbor reported me to the authorities. They knew who I was and they wanted the reward. So they reported me to the authorities and then I got captured and then I was sent back.
You're caught, sent back,
That's right.
Put in an interrogation camp.
I was beaten and I was questioned, I was interrogated, and they were trying to get a confession out of me and they wanted me to confess that I was trying to defect to South Korea, but I didn't and I begged them to understand.
It's worse to go to South Korea.
That's right, yes.
Why is going to South Korea worse? You're defecting.
North Korean government have been telling the people in North Korea that South Korea is poor. Kids in South Korea are polishing shoes and selling gums on the street to make ends meet, right? Which is a complete lie. And people going to South Korea, meaning that they know about the truth, and them coming back to North Korea, spreading the truth, they don't want that.
That's more of a threat.
That's right. They send you to a political prison camp. So it's a different prison camp where you will never get out. It's like a concentration camp.
Besides malnutrition, exhaustion, forced labor, and disease, another crucial factor of mortality in North Korean camps is the torture inflicted on prisoners. Beatings, unbearable stress positions, prolonged isolation.
I went to the North Korean defectors detention center.
Not as bad as if you'd gone to South Korea, but bad.
It was bad. There were many rules, and you had to memorize them. And if you misquoted even one of those rules, like they would force you to stand all night reciting the rules until work began the next morning. And I was fed only 150 kernels of corn. And, one morning I was marching in a roast, our work site, and I saw dry vomit on the road. And I was so hungry that I got on my hands and knees and began picking the rice out of the dry vomit. And I didn't stop eating the dry vomit until the beating from the guards were too unbearable.
Guards were beating you, but you kept doing it?
So I was actually holding up the line. That's why they came and beat me up. 9 months later, I had lost so much weight that, I was a worthless worker. And eventually, because I couldn't even stand up or even lift my arm. And eventually they sent me to my half-brother's house.
He lived there 7 months. In 2009, there was economic reform in North Korea, devaluing the won.
Basically, Kim Jong-il wanted to take over the economics, right? So North Korean 장마당 was becoming too big. 장마당 is like a black market, and people were literally buying things in massive, which becoming like a capitalism, right?
Even the dictator couldn't stop some capitalism.
He could not. North Korea doesn't want that. Therefore, the idea that Kim Jong-il had is if we were to make the money worthless, I'm going to take back control. right? But because North Korea doesn't have banks, we don't have Visa card, credit cards. It's all in cash, and people have stacks of cash, somewhere stored in their houses. And the money became worthless. And, I've seen, my neighbors taking their own lives because they lost everything. And the story was the same thing with my half-brother as well. And he lost everything. And he told me, you know what? I can't take care of you anymore. You're 15. You're your own man now. So you have to find your way to support yourself. So that's when I started working at coal mine. I would work 6 days a week in coal mine, and we would push 1,000-pound steel coal cart miles into the mountain. Then we'll crawl down the smaller tunnels with empty sacks and only return once they're full. And cave-ins were common, and I saw other people lose their limbs and even lives when, accidents happened. And, I eventually realized being in this coal mine, dying here, or dying trying to escape North Korea again, it's far worth.
South Korean pop in North Korea on a smuggled DVD.
He also managed to watch some videos that were different, not North Korean propaganda.
They're always playing documentary about Kim Il-sung going out to different countries, meeting with different presidents, of different countries. And watching that movie, I did partially believe that kind of propagandas, but not anymore after watching James Bond.
James Bond.
Where would you get the tapes? How would you watch?
Well, it's illegal, and it actually goes around the neighborhood, within very tight, a relationship with our neighbors, our friends, and it's smuggled in.
James Bond is such an extreme on the upside. How did you resolve the two?
Right, and also, and that's also the thing too, is that not just James Bond, I watched Bad Boys 1 too, with Will Smith and Martin Lawrence.
Man, what is this having a picnic in my car?
My favorite moment about the Bad Boys 1, eating hamburger in the car with the French fries, right? And when I was in North Korea, I really didn't know what that was. I was like, it looks like some block of thingy, it looks like a yellow thing pulling out of a box. I really didn't know what that was, but they sure ate it. It looked like delicious. Will Smith is my inspiration to actually escape North Korea in a way, because yes, North Korea do tell me Americans, they drug problems, gun problems, and all this kind of poverty, and things like that, and they're not they're werewolves, and they're coming into North Korea and mass massacring people. But actually watching Bad Boys 1, eating, people eating burgers and driving fancy cars, right? And that did not make sense to me. It's wait, if they're non-human and if they're so poor, how can they afford this? Like me going out to street right in front of my house, the road is not even paved and it's dirty. There's it's non-comparable, if that makes sense. So in a way, it actually gave me a different perspective.
For more of my content, go to johnstossel.com. I post a new short video every Tuesday. That's at johnstossel.com.
So I escaped coal mine, and on a humid day in August, I was lying down on a hillside, and I saw a train come to stop, and people were exiting out of the train cars. So I approached, and I realized that the train was going to Hesan, which is a border town. And in North Korea, there are a lot of power outages. So the train, right, it stops middle of nowhere. And it was humid, it was hot, so people can't sit there is no air conditioning in the trains, right? So they get out of the train, they just mingle and just chill. And then I actually joined the crowd, and when the power came back up, I joined the line, and then I walked up to the security guard, and he asked me for my papers and documents, and I lied that my mother had them and that she was already on the train. And he nodded, and I got on the train, and for the next 2 days, I hid in the train. Right, and sometimes I would have to climb out of the train, a train, and hide on the top of the train, or hide in the connection between the two cars to avoid the guards. And eventually, I came to the border town, and this time I was alone. Like, first escape, I had some help, but this time I was alone, but I still knew how to get to the river and when is a safe time to do so because I've been there before. So around 3 p.m., I walked into the river, and then I carried a bucket, pretending that I was getting water. And as soon as nobody was looking, I ditched the bucket and I hid in the tall grass, and I just dug, and I hid for many hours waiting for the darkness. And when it was middle of, like, it was midnight, it was dark, it was quiet, and when I finally thought it was safe, I quietly waded into the water. And in the middle of the river, I slipped on a rock and I let out a gasp, right? And a flood of light was on my back, and the guard was screaming at me to turn back, right? And he said that he would shoot me if I didn't turn back. But at that point, I already knew I was dead either way, because if I obey and return to the shore, then I will be shipped off to labor camp, and this time is my second time, so there is no mercy for me, right? Or either he shoot, or I would keep going. And I kept waiting ahead, and the guard kept screaming.
He didn't shoot it.
But he didn't shoot, yes. So that's why I doubt, is there really a bullet?
He might have not had ammunition.
I guess I was just lucky.
And you get to China, what happens?
Mm-hmm. Yes, so I came to China. Second time. And first time my dad was, on the other side waiting for me with the taxi cab. But this time I was alone. And as soon as I got to China, I needed to get out of that city as soon as I could. So I started to take off. I started running. And then I, walked in China for 3 days without any water or food. And eventually my shoe fell apart. And, my feet got blisters. And it popped and it started bleeding. So I couldn't walk anymore. So I collapsed in the middle of a road, and I started regretting, why did I even leave North Korea? If I was still in the coal mine, I would have something to eat right now, and I would at least have a roof over my head. I would not die like this. Sometime later, a Chinese guy was driving a motorcycle, and then he passes me by, and then he comes back, and he looks at me, and then he's baffled, right? And it's like I speak broken Chinese. I told him, I'm looking for my dad, right? And then he was thinking for a while. And then eventually he's like, okay, get on my motorcycle. And he took me to his house. And then the next morning, he connected me to a South Korean missionary. Helping a North Korean refugee in China, that's a prison-worthy kind of act. Right, you are fined or you're imprisoned, both, sometimes both.
This guy was taking a big chance on you.
He had, and we rode the motorcycle for about for another 8 hours, and we came to his house midnight, really I think he had to wake his wife up, but I could hear them arguing, right? It's I'm assuming the wife is why did you bring him here? You're gonna get us in trouble, and things like that. And the husband was saying, oh, I'm so sorry, he was there. But it's I understood, they're arguing in Chinese. So Chinese guy introduced me to the South Korean missionary, and that South Korean missionary gave me money, and then eventually put me on a bus to my dad's house. And as soon as I get to my dad's, he whips out a belt, and then he beats me, and he asked me, did you kill someone in North Korea? Right? Because imagine a 17-year-old kid risking his life, crossing international border, and walking all that way, coming to find him, right? It doesn't make sense to him. But I told him no, I came to China because I missed you. I was hungry, and I was scared too. And he eventually, understand. He took me in, and a few months later, my dad found me a broker who was helping North Korean refugees to escape from China to Southeast Asia and eventually to come to Thailand. And in Thailand, there is an international refugee camp. So and I came to international refugee camp, and then I, talked to UN, and I applied for a political asylum to United Nations, and United Nations accepted me, And then they were like, "You're gonna go to California." I was like, "I don't know what that is, but sure, I'd love to."
What most surprised you in America?
Basically stepping down out of the plane, coming down the plane, right? And like, I didn't even think that I'll be on a plane, right? I've never imagined being on a plane, and let alone, coming to America. And, the first thing that I felt, stepping off that plane was safety, right? It's like, I'm safe, I'm here. Like, I don't really need to worry about being captured and deported back. So safety was like the felt that I had. Like, I haven't felt that in like longest time. And also the choices as well. Like, if you go to McDonald's, right? Like, there is so many choices of like even drinks. Like, if you walk into grocery stores, like, there's so many different brands of tomatoes, strawberries, like the choices that we have, right? Like, in North Korea, that was not a thing. And even China, that wasn't a thing for me, right? Choices that we have, like consumerism, right? There's so many things that are available for us to use. And that was really shocking.
You learned English watching Family Guy?
That's right, yes.
Peekaboo! Yes, I see you, fat man. Where's Daddy? Where did you go?
Stewie Griffin. Peter Griffin.
You have a favorite moment in that show?
Yes. Peter Griffin, gets kicked out of the train, and then he lands in Korea, and then he says, "Oh my gosh, I'm in the wrong Korea," right?
Oh my God, I'm in the wrong Korea.
He says, "Like your missiles, I'm about to go ballistic."
Like your missiles, I'm about to go ballistic.
I did not speak any English the day I arrived in America. Watching that show, helped me to learn English so much faster. But, one thing that I've always wanted to do was actually to go to school and experience that, like the education, having friends, and feeling like belongs, because like you would see like people, going to school and coming back together, going together, and laughing. And I've always wanted that, but I didn't. So when I came to America, I told my social workers, like, I want to enroll in high school. So I did. And man, like first day in school, like not knowing anything, far back in the classroom, right? It's like not knowing what's going on.
But Ryu kept at it.
I graduated within 3 years. And I worked as a sushi chef. I used to work at Panda Express. I used to work at Starbucks. I also worked as an Uber driver and Lyft driver as well. But, I've had the fortunate opportunity to actually go study coding at a coding boot camp where I learned to, code. So now I, work as a software engineer for a small company. And since then, I've got married as well. I have my own family that I can, call home. So I'm very blessed. America is, for me, it's land of opportunity, right? You can do whatever you want, right? And life from here, it's only going to get better.
Our media focus on how terrible America is.
If capitalism works, if this is the best we got, why does it seem to give such a raw deal?
I want to have a reasonable discussion with people, right? I want to respect their opinions, but when it comes to people taking, granted for the freedom that they it's shocking for me. And it's very frustrating for me too. Freedom could mean a lot of different things for different people. And for me personally, freedom means choosing what I want to do with my life.
I've made my living criticizing the government. I sure wouldn't last long in North Korea.
In North Korea, if you were to talk bad about Kim Il-sung or the regime, right, that's the highest crime you can commit. And not just you, but your entire 3 generations of your family will be sent to political prison camp where you will never get out, right? Yeah. So America, we have it very good. You can talk, you can go out right now and yeah, like you said, you can talk bad about, how bad Trump is or how bad Obama is or how much you don't like the, you don't like the government, right? Nothing will happen to you. But in North Korea, you'll be gone.
Now Ryu has a YouTube channel. He stands on the street with a sign saying, "Ask a North Korean." People are often shocked by his answers.
I was fed 150 kernels of corn per day.
What? That's crazy, man.
I chose my freedom to do, sharing stories about North Korean people, raising awareness of what's happening in North Korea and hopefully, to change the narrative about North Korea as well. So like, whenever you think about North Korea, Kim Jong-un is not the first thing that you think of. Missile is not the first thing that you think of, but North Korean people, right? So that's what I chose to do with my freedom.
Americans are surprised? They have no idea how bad things are?
I am surprised to actually find how much people don't know about North Korea, right? Oftentimes I go out there and I tell people I'm from the North Korea, and they would say, oh yeah, that's the good one, right? And I'm like, not really, and let me tell you why, right? And then I get into my story, escape stories, and every time one thing that I'm really surprised too is that once they learn about my story and once they know what's really happening in North Korea, then they actually really look at North Korea differently, right? And they learn something about North Korea. So I feel good. Right? I feel like my job well done. And there are a lot of people who doesn't know what's happening in North Korea, and I feel like sense of responsibility to be the voice, right, to North Korean people who doesn't have a voice. There are 34,000 North Korean refugees resettled in South Korea, and there are about 400 officially documented North Korean refugees in America, but not all of them can actually share their stories because they still have family back in North Korea. And if you share your experience in North Korea or how, brutal the North Korean regime is, like your family back in North Korea will get punished, right? So for me, I don't really have a ties back in North Korea, therefore I can share my story.
Now on social media, Americans are praising socialism.
Socialism is the only system that can save us.
Socialism stays winning.
Just go to North Korea for 10 days and you will know how bad it is, right? And you don't really know how good you have it here. You don't really know you have it good until you have it bad, like I did, right? So quite frankly, for me, somebody is talking about, oh, North Korean socialism is good, let's push for socialism, that's quite offensive to me, right? Because I've lost my friends, I've buried my own mother because, socialism, right? So it's quite offensive to me. But yeah, that's what we mean by taking granted, right, of the freedom that we have, freedom of speech, freedom of movement, right, freedom of religion. Second Amendment, freedom to bear arms, who does that? Where does, do you think that happens in North Korea? No. I feel like my life is complete now, because all the choices that I can have, I can be whatever I want. I work as a software engineer. I drive a Toyota Camry, a hybrid. That wouldn't happen if that was in North Korea. If that was in socialism, that wouldn't happen, right? I travel anywhere I want. I can eat whatever I want. I can do whatever I want, whatever I want. Right? In America, which is capitalist country, if it was in North Korea, that's not possible.
Thank you, Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Stossel.
I'm happy you've made it to freedom.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm so glad I'm here.
Thanks for listening. New episodes drop the first Monday of every month. You can subscribe wherever you get podcasts.